He was the first and only Capitanchina of Georgetown, Penang, and is also one of the first Chinese person documented to have settled on Penang Island. And yet, if you ask most of the people in Penang, even the Penang Chinese people, the majority would not be able to tell you who is Koh Lay Huan. And so that's why I'm creating this video to explain to you this particular person, so that in future, if somebody were to ask you who is Koh Lay Huan, you have something to tell him about it. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Chapter 1: The Forgotten Founder. Who was Koh Lay Huan? To begin my explanation of Koh Lay Huan, I need to lay down a caveat. There are no existing paintings of this personality, and certainly no photographs from such an early period. So all the illustrations in this video are recreations. Now let's journey back to the very beginning of modern Penang, to the founding years of Georgetown, to rediscover the life and legacy of a man most Malaysians today have never heard of, but whose influence still echoes through the streets of this island, Koh Lay Huan, the very first and only Capitanchina of Georgetown. You may have strolled past the East Indies mansion on China Street, admired the architecture, or taken in the quiet charm of Georgetown's heritage lanes. But few realize that number 25 Lebochina was once the home of Koh Lay Huan, the man who helped shape Penang's earliest Chinese community, built its economic foundation, and left behind a legacy that spans centuries and continents. But Koh Lay Huan was no ordinary settler. He was a revolutionary fugitive, a daring entrepreneur, and a master diplomat. From rebellious beginnings in Fujian province to exile in Siam to his crucial alliance with Captain Francis Light, Koh's life reads like an epic, one that spans empires, secret societies, and royal courts. As Penang's first Capitanchina, Koh Lay Huan brought with him more than just manpower. He brought vision, organization, and authority. He played a central role in turning a sparsely inhabited island into a thriving port city. And yet, despite his towering influence, he remains largely absent from our national memory. In this video, broken into 12 chapters, I will take you through the remarkable life story of Koh Lay Huan, his rise to power, his role in early Penang society, his family and descendants, and his enduring legacy. So join me as we bring light to the forgotten founder of Penang's Chinese community. This is the story of Koh Lay Huan, a man whose footsteps helped shape the island we now call home. Chapter 2: Rebel from Fujian, the Early Years in China. I do not have any information of when Koh Lay Huan was born. What I do know is that before he became a prominent figure in Penang, his story began far away in the southeastern province of Fujian, China. Born in the county of Dong'an in Jiangzhou Prefecture, Koh was raised in a region known for its strong mercantile traditions and its resistance to foreign rule. During the 18th century, Fujian was a hotbed of unrest. The Manchu-led Qing dynasty, having taken control of China in the 1600s, faced deep resentment from many Han Chinese. Secret societies flourished in the province, especially the Tiantihui, or Heaven and Earth Society. These were underground networks of anti-Qing rebels who dreamed of restoring Han rule to China. Koh Lay Huan was drawn into this world, Educated and ambitious, he found himself at odds with the Qing authorities. His participation in rebellious activities forced him to flee China, a decision that would set in motion the course of the rest of his life. In a way, his fleeing China followed the course taken by early Han Chinese refugees in the aftermath of the collapse of the Ming dynasty. Escaping southward by sea, Koo first landed in Siam, present-day Thailand. There, he used his talents to quickly gain the trust of local leaders. He settled in the town of Nakhon Si Thammarat, and his influence grew so significant that one of his daughters would eventually marry the town's penghulu or district head. From China to Siam, Koo had reinvented himself from a hunter refugee into a respected figure. But his journey was not yet complete. The next chapter would take him to the Malay Peninsula, first to Kada, where he would once again rise as a community leader, and later to the newly founded British settlement of Penang. In Koh Lay Huan, we see the spirit of resilience and reinvention, a man shaped by revolution, exile, and opportunity who never stopped moving forward, always seeking the next place where he could lead, build, and influence. Join me now as we explore how Koh Lay Huan established his roots in Kada and built the foundation for what would soon become Penang's most powerful Chinese legacy. Chapter 3: From Fugitive to Leader, Exile in Siam and Kada. After fleeing the political turmoil in Qing China, Koh Lay Huan sailed south across the South China Sea and found refuge in the Kingdom of Siam, modern-day Thailand. There, far from the reach of the Manchu Empire, he began a new chapter in life, not as a fugitive, but as a respected leader and businessman. Koo settled in Nakhon Si Thammarat, an ancient coastal town in southern Siam. His intelligence, connections, and charisma soon won him the trust of the local authorities. In a rare show of cross-cultural alliance, one of his daughters married the town's penghulu or district chief. Through this marriage, Koo not only gained protection and influence, but also embedded himself deeply into the local political structure. But Koo's ambition extended beyond Siam. He soon turned his attention westward towards Kada, a Malay sultanate just across the Andaman Sea. With trade routes expanding and political opportunities opening, Koo moved to Kada, where he again flourished. He established a second family there and was appointed Capitanchina of Kada at Kuala Muda, acting as the leader and representative of the Chinese community. By now, Koh Lay Huan had mastered the art of navigating different worlds, Chinese, Siamese, and Malay, while maintaining close ties to powerful local rulers. He was a trader, a planter, a tax farmer, and a community headman. And more importantly, he understood the value of diplomacy, family alliances, and economic strategy. In Kada, Koo built the connections and reputation that would soon carry him to Penang, just as Francis Light was preparing to establish a British trading post on the island. Koo's timing once again was impeccable. What began as a desperate flight from political persecution had now transformed into a foundation for lasting influence. Koh Lay Huan had reinvented himself in exile not once but twice. In the next chapter, we'll see how Koh Lay Huan's meeting with Francis Light would forever change the future of Penang and secure Koo's place in history as one of the island's founding fathers. Chapter 4: Meeting Francis Light, the birth of Penang's Chinese community. The year was 1786. British trader Captain Francis Light had just taken possession of the island of Pulau Pinang on behalf of the British East India Company. He renamed it Prince of Wales Island and its capital, Georgetown. At the time, the island was sparsely inhabited. Only a few Malay fishing families called it home. But Light had ambitious plans to turn it into a bustling free port, a commercial rival to Dutch-controlled Malacca. And for that, he needed people, especially those with the skills to build, plant, trade, and grow. Enter Koh Lay Huan. Already a respected Capitanchina in Kada, Koh brought with him not only vision but people. In the months following Light's arrival, Koh sailed from Kuala Muda with boatloads of Chinese and Malays, workers, farmers, craftsmen to begin clearing the land, cultivating crops, and laying the economic foundation of the new settlement. When the two men met, it was a meeting of equals. Light saw in Koh a capable ally, wealthy, resourceful, politically connected, and able to command respect among the Chinese and Malay communities. Koh presented Light with a symbolic gift, fishing nets, a gesture of goodwill, but also a reminder of the maritime and economic potential of the island. In May 1787, just 1 year after Light's arrival, Koh Lay Huan was formally appointed the first Capitanchina of Penang. It was a position of great influence and responsibility, placing him as the chief intermediary between the British authorities and the growing Chinese population. Light once described him with a mix of admiration and caution. Tuanka China is an old fox. He has little to do with the government, but being rich and having married a daughter of the old king, he bears considerable sway. With Koh's leadership, the Chinese community in Penang grew rapidly. By 1789, the island's population had already reached 5,000 and would double again within a decade. In the next chapter, we'll explore the duties and powers Koh held as Capitanchina and how he shaped Penang's early governance and society. Chapter 5, the first Capitanchina, Authority, Diplomacy and Influence. In colonial Penang, the British administration was small and thinly stretched. Much of the day-to-day management of different communities was left to trusted intermediaries. For the growing Chinese population, that man was Koh Lay Huan. Appointed by Francis Light in 1787, Koh became the first and only Capitanchina of Georgetown. But what did this title really mean? As Capitanchina, Koh served as the chief representative and leader of the Chinese community. He was the British government's key contact point for Chinese affairs, responsible for maintaining order, collecting taxes, settling disputes, and mobilizing labor. He was both a community leader and a magistrate, a go-between trusted by the colonials yet respected by his people. Koh's power didn't come from his title alone. It came from his deep network of connections across the region. He had alliances with Kada, Siam, and even in Aceh, where he had helped suppress a rebellion on behalf of Sultan Juaha al-Alam. He also spoke multiple languages, had married into local royal families, and was seen as someone who could negotiate, mediate, and lead across cultures. His role as Capitanchina was more than administrative, it was strategic. Koh played a balancing act between British commercial interests and Chinese communal welfare. Under his leadership, Penang's Chinese community thrived, with new migrants arriving regularly from southern China. These settlers became the nucleus of what would later be recognized as Penang's distinct Chinese identity. Koh also held influence beyond Penang. In Siam, one of his daughters became the wife of the headman of Nakhon Si Thammarat. In Kedah, he had earlier served as Capitanchina at Kuala Muda. These cross-border ties gave him an unparalleled edge in trade, diplomacy, and regional politics. While the British saw him as a shrewd operator, Koh Lay Huan was in fact laying the groundwork for a thriving Chinese society in Penang, one that blended tradition with adaptation, commerce with leadership. In the next chapter, we'll look at how Koh and Francis Light turned Penang into an agricultural and trading powerhouse, starting with pepper. Chapter 6, Building a New Economy, Agriculture, Trade and Pepper. When Francis Light first set foot on Penang Island, it was little more than jungle and swamp. But with Koh Lay Huan's support, it was soon transformed into a thriving settlement, one powered by agriculture and trade. Koh was no stranger to farming. Long before arriving in Penang, he had experience cultivating pepper in Siam and Kada. Pepper at that time was one of the most valuable cash crops in the global spice trade, and Koh understood its potential. Recognizing this, Light sent Koh Lay Huan on a mission to Aceh in 1790. There, Koh used his connections with Sultan Johar al-Alam, a ruler fluent in both English and French, to secure pepper plants and expert knowledge for Penang. This trip was a success, and it marked the beginning of Penang's pepper industry. Koh didn't just bring back plants, he brought back a vision to make Penang a center of plantation agriculture and commerce. Under his guidance, pepper cultivation took root, especially in the island's fertile foothills. These early plantations helped kickstart the local economy, giving Penang a foothold in regional trade. But pepper was just the beginning. With a growing labor force, many of whom were brought over by Koh from southern China, Penang soon became a hub for other crops too, including betel nut, rice, and sugar. Chinese settlers took up farming, shopkeeping, and artisanal trades, while merchants established vital trading links with Kada, Sumatra, and beyond. Koh Lay Huan stood at the center of this economic web. He was a merchant, planter, and tax farmer. He understood both the needs of the British East India Company and the ambitions of the Chinese migrant community. Through his leadership, Penang's economy was set on a path of growth and self-sufficiency. What makes Koh's role even more remarkable is that he didn't just help build the economy, he helped govern it too. In the next chapter, we'll see how Koh laid the foundation for local governance in Penang through a groundbreaking community that shaped the island's early administration. Chapter 7, The Committee of Assessors, laying the groundwork for local governance. As Penang grew from a small outpost into a bustling port town, the British colonial government faced a new challenge: how to govern a rapidly expanding multi-ethnic settlement. Roads needed to be built, drains cleaned, security maintained, but all of this required funding, and funding required taxes. In 1795, a pivotal moment occurred. Francis Light's business partner, James Scott, proposed that property owners begin paying taxes, what would later be known as municipal assessments. But who would determine how much to collect and how to spend it? To solve this, the colonial authorities turned to trusted community leaders. They formed what became known as the Committee of Assessors, the first of its kind in Penang. At its heart were two key figures: Koh Lay Huan, Capitanchina of the Chinese, and Kada Mohidin, the Capitanchina representing the Indian Muslim community. Together, these leaders helped establish the first form of local representation in Penang. The committee decided tax rates, oversaw collection, and ensured that funds were used to maintain public roads, policing, and urban cleanliness. While modest in scope, this marked a significant shift towards participatory governance. For the Chinese community, this was more than just taxation, it was recognition. Through Koh Lay Huan, the Chinese were not just laborers and merchants, they were part of the civic structure. They had a say in how their town was run. Koo's involvement also showed his deep trust and rapport with the British authorities. He wasn't just managing his own people, he was helping to govern a colony. This early collaboration between local leaders and colonial administrators laid the groundwork for what would later become elected municipal councils nearly a century later. By participating in this formative experiment in self-governance, Koo helped shape the early identity of Georgetown, not just as a trading post, but as a functioning multicultural city. In the next chapter, we'll look at the man behind the role, Koh Lay Huan as a family patriarch, and the extraordinary lineage he founded across Penang, Kada, and beyond. Chapter 8, A Man of Two Worlds, Family, Legacy, and the Koo clan. Behind every great historical figure lies a personal story, and for Koh Lay Huan, that story is one of duality. He was not only a statesman and entrepreneur, but also a patriarch who straddled two worlds, the Malay Peninsula and the Chinese diaspora. Koh Lay Huan had two families, one in Kada, the other in Penang. In Kada, with his wife Guan Bui Nio, he had at least 3 children. In Penang, with Saw It Nio, he fathered 6 sons and 2 daughters. This dual family structure was not uncommon among 18th century Chinese merchants operating across Southeast Asia. It was both personal and strategic, strengthening ties with local communities while building a foundation for regional influence. His children, and especially his Penang-born descendants, went on to leave a deep imprint on the region. Koo's lineage became a network of merchants, officials, reformers, and scholars who would help shape the future of Penang, Kedah, Singapore, Taiwan, and even Imperial China. One daughter, Luan, married the headman of Nakhon Sitamarat in Siam. Her son would become governors in Panga and Takuapa, linking the Koo family to Thai politics and trade. Koo's eldest son, Koh Kok Chai, was appointed governor of Kuala Kedah between 1821 and 1841, a powerful position that reinforces the family's standing. Another son accompanied Sir Stamford Raffles to Singapore in 1819. Others served as agents to the Siamese crown, governors, and businessmen throughout the Malay world. The family didn't just integrate into colonial society, they became pillars of it. This was a family that understood how to operate across cultures, languages, and political systems. Koh Lay Huan had created a dynasty, one that carried his legacy far beyond Penang, long after his death in 1826. In the next chapter, we'll look at how his descendants built on that legacy, rising to become some of the most influential Chinese figures in Southeast Asia, and eventually even in Imperial China and colonial Taiwan. Chapter 9, Rise of the Koo dynasty, Statesmen, Scholars, and Industrialists. Koh Lay Huan's influence didn't die with his death in 1826. In fact, some of the most remarkable chapters of his legacy were written by his descendants, a dynasty of statesmen, scholars, and industrialists who shaped the history of Penang, Malaya, China, Taiwan, and Siam. Let's begin with Koh An-beng, one of Koh Lay Huan's sons. Sent back to China to pursue education, he rose through the ranks to become a scholar official in the Chinese imperial court. Eventually, he was transferred to Taiwan to assist in its administration, a remarkable journey from the child of a Southeast Asian capitan to a Mandarin in the Qing government. But it was Koh Anbing's grandson, Gu Anjung, who made an even greater mark. During the Japanese occupation of Taiwan, Gu Xianjung strategically cooperated with the Japanese administration, securing monopoly rights and amassing a fortune through rice and sugar production. His family became one of the big five business dynasties of Taiwan. The Koo family's influence only expanded. Koo Chenfu, son of Koo Xianjung, emerged as a major political and economic figure. He was a key diplomat in Taiwan-China relations and founded the Koos Group, one of the largest business conglomerates in Taiwan. By 2015, the Koo family's estimated worth was $2.8 billion. Meanwhile, back in Southeast Asia, another branch of the Koo family was making waves. Koh Kok Chai, who remained in Malaya, produced descendants like Koh Sian Tat, a major player in regional commerce. Koh Sian Tat controlled the opium trade across Southeast Asia and was the first Chinese justice of the peace in Penang. He later served on the Penang Municipal Commission, helping shape the city's administration. This extraordinary family tree, rooted in the life of one migrant from Fujian, grew into a global web of influence. Each generation rose to meet the challenges of its time, whether in commerce, politics, or culture. In the next chapter, we focus our attention to Koh Lay Huan's most intellectually celebrated descendant, Gu Hongming, a Confucian scholar and cultural icon whose ideas would shake the modern world. Chapter 10, Gu Hongming, the Confucian cosmopolitan. Among Koh Lay Huan's most distinguished descendants, none would become as intellectually renowned or as paradoxical as Gu Hongming, also known by the Hokkien pronunciation Koh Hongming. Born in 1857 in Penang, Gu Hongming's life was extraordinary from the start. At the age of 10, he was sent to Scotland, where he was educated in some of Europe's finest institutions. He earned a master's degree in literature from the University of Edinburgh, a civil engineering diploma from Leipzig, and later studied law in Paris. In every way, he was the product of the Western world. And yet, Gu Hongming chose a different path. In his 20s, he began learning classical Chinese, a language and culture he had never mastered as a child growing up under British rule. Embracing the legacy of his ancestors, he made a deliberate decision to return to China, where he would become one of the fiercest defenders of Confucian civilization in the face of Western modernity. Gu became a high-ranking official in the late Qing government, but it was through his writing and translations that he made his mark on the world. His book, The Spirit of the Chinese People, 1915, introduced Chinese philosophy to a Western audience and challenged Western arrogance by asserting the spiritual depth of Confucian values. He shocked and fascinated his European peers. A Chinese man in a Qing queue, dressed in traditional robes, writing impeccable English prose that quoted Shakespeare and Confucius in the same breath. To some, he was a cultural enigma. To others, he was a sage. Even Mahatma Gandhi and Leo Tolstoy were influenced by Gu's writings. His life stood as a bridge between civilizations, between East and West, modernity and tradition. Gu Hongming has been described as a cultural amphibian, but perhaps he was something more. A world citizen shaped by colonial Penang, educated in Europe and committed to preserving the soul of Chinese civilization. In the next chapter, we return to 1826 when the passing of Koh Lay Huan marked the end of an era and the beginning of new rivalries in Penangs Chinese society. Chapter 11, The End of an Era, Koh Lay Huan's Death and the Fragmentation of Power. In 1826, the chapter of Koh Lay Huan's life came to a close. He passed away in Georgetown after decades of shaping Penang's early history, politically, economically, and socially. His death marked not just the end of a man, but the end of a singular leadership structure in the Chinese community of Penang. Until then, Koh had been the unquestioned head of Penang's Chinese society. As Capitanchina, he had been the bridge between the colonial authorities and the Chinese residents, the unifying figure in a community made up of different dialect groups, secret societies, and newcomers from China. But with Koh's passing, the British made a fateful decision. They abolished the office of Capitanchina altogether. In place of this traditional structure, they implemented what was known as the stature of justice, shifting the model of leadership from appointed ethnic intermediaries to a more bureaucratic, legalistic system of governance. The effect on the Chinese community was profound. Without a unifying figure like Koh Lay Huan, factionalism began to rise. Rivalries among different clans and dialect groups, Hokkien, Cantonese, Teochew, became more visible. Secret societies, which had been previously managed through diplomacy and negotiations, began to compete more openly for influence and resources. Meanwhile, Penang's strategic position was being challenged. In 1819, just 7 years before Koh's death, Sir Stamford Raffles founded Singapore. As it grew, Singapore began to overshadow Penang as the main British trading hub in the region. Trade volume in Penang declined, and with it came economic anxiety and intensified competition among its communities. The vacuum left by Koh Lay Huan could not be easily filled. For decades, he had been the glue that held together Penang's Chinese population, a patriarch, a power broker, and a peacemaker. Without him, the cohesion he had built began to unravel. Chapter 12, Legacy of a Founder, Remembering Koh Lay Huan. In our final chapter, we'll reflect on the legacy of Koh Lay Huan, not just as a historical figure, but as a founder whose impact continues to shape Penang's identity to this day. As we close this story, let us pause to reflect on the extraordinary legacy of Koh Lay Huan, a man whose life bridged rebellion and empire, exile and leadership, tradition and transformation. From his humble beginnings in Fujian, where he joined the Tianti Hui in defiance of the Qing dynasty, to his rise as Capitanchina of Penang, Koh Lay Huan's journey was marked by resilience, vision, and adaptability. He was more than a migrant or trader. He was a founder in every sense of the word. He helped build Penang not just physically, but institutionally. As a pioneer in agriculture, he brought pepper cultivation to the island. As a community leader, he fostered order, cooperation, and prosperity among Penang's early Chinese settlers. And as a statesman, he worked alongside the British to lay the foundations for Penang's civil infrastructure, most notably through the community of assessors. But perhaps Koh's greatest legacy lies in the dynasty he founded. His descendants went on to become governors, merchants, scholars, and cultural icons. They helped shape the political and economic landscapes of Penang, Kada, Siam, Singapore, Taiwan, and beyond. Figures like Gu Hongming, Koh Tat, and Ku Jung were not just notable because of their personal achievements, but because they carried forward a spirit of cultural synthesis and ambition that Koh Lay Huan embodied. They were multilingual, multicultural, and unafraid to straddle the worlds of East and West. Today, Koh Lay Huan's original residence, number 25 China Street, still stands in Georgetown, lovingly restored as the East Indies mentioned. Its walls, its timbers, its very location speak to the central role Koh played in Penang's birth. As Penang continues to evolve, it is important to remember those who shaped its earliest foundation. Koh Lay Huan was one of them, a visionary migrant, a community leader, and a forgotten founding father whose legacy lives on in the streets of Georgetown and in the stories of countless descendants. Thank you for joining me in rediscovering the life of Koh Lay Huan right here on Learn Penang Hokkien. Until we meet again in the next video, Kam Sia Lu Che Che.